Well, guys, I'm really excited for tonight's guest. I don't know when you're listening to this, but she started her career off as a graphic designer, but you may know her from her recent comic writing work. She's got Red Sonja going at Dynamite right now, also Catwoman at DC Comics. We are here to talk about another comic coming up from Dynamite Entertainment. It's The Nightmare Before Christmas, The Shiver of Christmas Town, which looks amazing. So here to talk with me about that is Miss Torunn Grønbekk.
That
How are
was a
you?
really great introduction. Thank you for that. I'm very happy to be here.
I'm happy to have you here. It's always fun. Like you never know who's going to show up in the inbox, but I usually get I'll usually get like, hey, here are the books we have coming out, and here's the creative teams. Who would you like to talk to? And I'm like, oh yeah, I need to talk to Torunn Grønbekk. Let's do it. Let's do
Oh,
it.
I'm going to try to deliver. There will be swearing. I'm sorry about that. I hope it's okay. It's
It's all
just
good. I don't censor anyone here.
okay. That's good because I recently learned that, like yesterday, that you consider like asshole swearing. I was trying to find like that we have a bit in Catwoman where someone was supposed to sort of they were saying something like these rich assholes. That was redacted. So it's
Okay.
like, okay, could we say a-hole? They're like, no. Can we do bastards? No. And I don't know. I don't know what to say anymore. I'm like, I'm at the bottom of my list. All my like all the usual. If you could do Norwegian cursing, there's a lot of bestiality involved.
Okay.
So you can't really. I don't know.
So
Uh,
I have found that the best substitute for that particular word is jerk.
oh,
Like
jerk
it
is
doesn't
good.
necessarily hit the same, but that's the one that works. Like, you jerk.
But
But
yeah,
but
I'm gonna write that on my little list of things. But just so you know, if I ever use the word like shoot, that's not what I'm trying to say. Just to be clear.
I
In
feel
all
you.
of the comics, including like I'm doing Spider Girl right now,
Mhm.
and she is 10, and she is sort of I know a bunch of 10-year-old and they swear like sailors. So, but we try to do a sort of she says fluck instead of fuck.
Mhm.
Very cutesy and something.
So something I was thinking about yesterday, just coincidentally, I was listening to, was it on the radio? I don't know where I was, but like someone said, butthole, but it was censored. But they don't censor the butt part. They censor hole, which is weird.
So
Like
you can say but.
like you can say butt. Oh, you can say butt, but I'm saying like
You can say
you can
but and
say
can say
you can
hole.
right. You
You
can
just
say like you. It's weird that in the word asshole, it's the hole that you put the beep on. Like that's weird to me, but that's how they do it for
that's so
TV.
funny. I'm gonna try to add in an ass in the next script and see if they censor ass. And because I don't think they would. I don't know. It's always an like I at some point I was writing, I'm not gonna mention maybe that not the comic or the publisher, but I had someone refer to someone as like, oh, they're wearing insurrection chic, and the publisher was like, nope, they're not. It's just like, yeah, but still, khakis and whatever. They're like, nope, can't use the word insurrection.
That's a hot button word these days.
I
Although
understand, but it's also,
apparently
I
there
mean,
was no insurrection, so
oh, is that so? I don't know. So I'll take your word for it. It's a fascinating thing when you're trying to, as a writer, you're obviously trying to write things that feels relevant in some way, right?
mhm,
And I don't see the reason to sort of sugarcoat anything at the moment. I feel like
mhm,
nothing should of this should be surprising, and we should sort of stand in it and call it what it is. It's
right.
hard to do when you're sort of wiggling around. But maybe it's just a lack of vocabulary on my part. I should be better. I've been making a list of all the things that I can say, adding jerk to it. Uh, and obviously I need another way to say insurrection. So please, if you have any suggestions, leave them in the comments.
Listen, I guess it would just be uprising, right? Like
Yeah.
that's how
But
that.
it's just the thing about uprising. The
Mhm.
uprising sounds cool. You know, the Warsaw uprising, that was a cool thing.
Right.
Uh, the insurrection, that was quite lame. Like what was the plan there? What was the plan? Like,
Um,
no one had a plan. They went on, like it was very lame. So I don't know, but you're right, obviously. But uprising, it just sounds like the people are doing a thing.
that's
They
true.
believe in something.
That's true. Right. And I guess like insurrection has a negative connotation, I guess, but only if we presume the government is good, right?
Sure.
Like there's been insurrection here before. We talk about like slave insurrection, and those were good things.
Oh
Like,
yeah.
you know,
And that's a fascinating thing too in the whole no political violence debate that's been going on. Like if you look at history, there's been a lot of like we are sort of made on a bit of political violence, if we're honest. Not that I'm pro, just try not to kill anyone.
yeah.
Just, generally.
The idea that I don't want to get on this soapbox, but the idea that
Get on
Americans,
it. Come on.
the idea that Americans are preaching about or against political violence is crazy to me. Like the our entire history is political violence. Like up to 50 years ago, like at the hands of the state, quite literally.
Yeah.
And then if we want to count like, all the terrorism and all the things, like voter intimidation, like all of this stuff was happening well into the 1980s and beyond. So that's odd that it's like all of a sudden now is the time where like
We
anti-political violence.
we suddenly figured out that violence was bad. Whereas I will say, in all of the sort of all of the things that I can't do, violence is one of the things that I can. Like that seems to be generally accepted. So like no political stuff, no horniness in any way,
Mhm.
you know? But violence,
I'm squeamish. Like I'm gonna be real. Like if it's time for us to like really have the rebellion, I'm gonna be like, can I be in like the fifth wave?
oh
Like,
yeah.
like I don't. I'm not built for it.
But that's sort of my sort of general feeling over here that like if we were to have some sort of shortage of something, or if the war comes, there are going to be a lot of people from my town in front of City Hall being like, "Do we have any gluten-free bread?" Like we're going to be very bad
Mm,
in a war setting. So maybe we shouldn't. Maybe we should just try to. But we had we're quite. I am in Norway, by the way.
okay.
I'm not sure if we got there. Um, and we're quite close to Russia. So when they went to war, we were a little like, okay, so we're doing a thing now. And we got a little pamphlet from the government being like, this is just by pure coincidence. Could you please just make sure you have, enough water for a week or so?
Okay, so Norway then is preparing for like a real possibility or threat of war. Because like I know that's like been one of the sort of scary talking points on our side on like elections. It's like, hey, if we don't check them, they're gonna go to Norway. Like, is that a real
Well,
fear?
the thing is like all of Europe is sort of preparing in some way. And it's been an interesting like I don't think it affects the civilians a lot. I will say when
Mhm.
I went to Finland a few months ago, they were like, we're just enjoying the peacetime until it stops. Like it that felt very real.
Mm,
And then we sometimes will hear like France just announce to their hospitals that they should expect wounded soldiers in 2026. And then we're just like, oh, okay, but where are we warring? Like where it's gonna happen? I don't know. I think Sweden is more worried than us because Russia feels like they have a certain historical um and a claim to Sweden.
mm.
And they're very mad about the whole NATO thing. And I have a cabin in Sweden, so I was talking to the Swedes when that whole debate were going on, and they're again just like, I don't know, we'll just enjoy the time until, whatever happens, happens. But I would wildly prefer us to just, I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't think we're ready. I don't think, as someone who spends most of her time like reading military history,
Mm.
I don't think we would do that well right now.
it's interesting, like, being American, we've been having this fascinating conversation offline just about geopolitics and how it feels to live in different areas, especially as, the news feels worldwide, but the feeling is very different. Like I read about things that happen over there. I'm sure you read about things that are happening here, and you're like, what the heck is going on?
Hmm.
But it's interesting kind of talking to people
Oh,
like that poster that I just put up and is
hmm.
now just fell. But anyway, talking to people on the ground, and it's just you get a weird vibe. I guess in one way, as an American, we're kind of spoiled in that there have not been wars fought on our soil that weren't started among us.
It,
Like,
yep, yep. Interesting phrasing there. Yeah,
right. So it's like I don't
yeah.
necessarily think about the threat of, like, I don't know, one day a missile's gonna show up. Like, and I live in a town where there's like military practice facilities and stuff. Like I've seen a tank, or not a tank, one of the big Jeeps that they drive. And I'm like, okay, well, I know there's army training, something happening somewhere, because why would they just be there in uniform in a Jeep? But like that stuff is far from my mind. And I see it like in history books or on TV. And then I turn the TV off and watch Batman or something.
Yeah. Which is, I mean, I think I just watched a House of Dynamite, where they sort of there is a nuclear threat, and to me that's pretty much always ever since I sort of understood the concept of the bomb. I've been like, this is the thing,
Mhm.
that if it happens, it's going to happen because absolute fucktards are on the control, right? Like it's going to be the worst people in the entire world are going to be there doing whatever they're going to do. And the movie was also like you can sort of see like no one's in control here. And it terrifies me, just the idea that idiots are going to be the end of the world. So I would much prefer, again, if we can stay away from that. And I think that one of the concepts that they brought up in that movie was the sort of like if you're playing and you're losing, you might flip the board.
Mhm.
Um, as a terrifying thought in our, again, I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah,
But we do have comics, luckily.
we do. We do. And speaking of, I wanted to ask you, like, because every time it's the first time talking to someone, I like to get into their origin story. And, I was reading about you before this in a very journalistic and not creepy way. And so finding that, you were trained as a graphic designer before getting into writing comics, I'm curious as to how that transition was and what it was you love about design and how maybe it leads to comics.
Well, I think the design part was I, I started coding when I was very, very young, and I needed at some point I needed to design some websites for a sort of computer party thing that we did, and I started like that's how I got into design as a very sort of like I need this to do this
Mhm.
kind of way. So now there was I'm in a like a portrait painter, and I have a fairly visual eye. Um, but I do think that the design, sometimes I feel like that's what I'm doing when I'm writing a story. Like I'll design it before I'll write it. And it doesn't feel very it almost feels sort of clinical in a way. Like I know how to craft it and I don't know. It's very useful to be a designer, and I think it's useful to have respect for design as sort of a craft too in comics because it's a very it says a lot about the rest of the comic, what kind of design you have. Um, but at some point, because I did a bunch of things, like I made like the Norwegian version of Etsy, like just before Etsy. I just want to point that out. And then we made it, we had it, we sold it to a big company, and we started working for that big company. And I realized like I really truly despise everyone here. Like I think I'm gonna fall to pieces if that's what I'm gonna do with my life. Just sit around in these insufferable meetings doing nothing. And that's also a very interesting thing when you come from a sort of entrepreneurship. I feel like that word has been destroyed by all of the man podcasts, being an entrepreneur.
Right. Yeah.
Um, but you like coming from a place where you do everything, right? Like that's sort of and then coming into a corporate setting where it's perfectly fine to just, lounge around and go from meeting to meeting. It was a very frustrating time in my life. And I've always been writing, and I knew I wanted to write. I knew that was sort of my wanted to do it. And I was on my way to do consulting on there was someone who wanted to make like an app that would save marriages. It was a very sort of like it was one of the like the TV famous shrinks in Norway that was like I'm gonna fix marriages. And he wanted me to consult on the design and the sort of gamify your marriage.
Okay.
And it was a train ride and I brought a bunch of comics and I read the comics and I felt like, oh, this is fucking home. Like this is what I love to do. I love like this feels like it means something.
Mhm.
Um, and then I was writing a story about the same time, and I realized like I got to a point in the story where all I wanted was one of Steve Dillon's sort of silent panels. Like I just wanted one reaction, preferably drawn by Steve, uh, and it would be a great book. And then I realized like there and then that I should just write comics instead. So I
Nice.
started doing that while doing a bunch of sort of art direction and still doing coding and being a sort of visual in between, like between developers uh, and whatever client or whatever whoever wanted to get something done.
Right.
Um, but it made more sense to me in every possible way to write. Even if I will say that I made more money doing everything else in the world than write comics.
So
But it's worth it.
I think it helps though. Like, so I always get into my background, but never this way, right? Um, I was always the quote unquote entrepreneurial kid growing up. Like, there was a time where like I sold sneakers and like, the innovation was that I wasn't just selling stuff like at a flea market, but I would just jump on eBay and sell stuff because I could make more money that way. And like, when I was in college, I was a graphic designer. I figured like there were parties going on every weekend. So if I could be like the guy designing the party flyers, then I would have money every weekend. And so I don't know, there's something about kind of flipping that switch early that makes you feel like you can do anything.
Kind
Like
of brilliant though, the party thing. Never thought about that.
it was helpful. And it's very rinse and repeat. It's just like find a pretty girl, throw her in the middle, put the club details. All right, it's not the 14th, it's the 21st, 7:30.
She might be there, the pretty girl. You should
Right.
come to the party.
She's absolutely not going to be there.
Oh, you
Like,
never know.
but hey, it worked out. But it's like, but doing sort of entrepreneurial things, it kind of breaks you out of this mindset that it's like, I have to have a secure thing because it
Mm.
almost puts you in a spot where you're like, I can go make money at any time if I
Oh
really
yeah,
need money. And then the decision is not about like, okay, how much money is this going to make me? It's like, well, am I happy doing this? And then can I live with less money or
yeah.
more or whatever? And it works out. So it's like, I think in that way, it's helpful because you're creative. You've done something that's made a bunch of money. And I guess it's like, all right, if writing doesn't work, I could always go code
Go
another app.
back to whoring myself out to consultants. That sounds bad, but you know what I mean.
Yeah.
I will say, like, talk about the differences between America and Norway. Like, one of the things that I've understood for a very long time is that, like, when it comes to stuff like this, we are in a very privileged position in the world just because if I fail, there's a safety net, and there's a safety net under the safety net, and like I wouldn't lose the house if I really fucked up. Like something would happen, right?
Mhm.
And we were me and my business partner at the time, we were invited to to speak at a women's conference in Kosovo. This is many years ago, so just after the war. And all the men were dead. Like it's like they have old men and very young men, and then a bunch of women. So it was like a women's conference where we were supposed to be like, oh, start your own business and do your thing, blah blah blah. And we realized like like that we didn't take any chances or risk. Like we had it fucking made from birth. That's what we had. And then I will say, seeing people in places like that are truly sort of doing something, it's incredibly inspiring. And I think it's one of the sort of things that I've thought a lot about during my life, being like, if there is a risk to be like, if I feel like it's correct, even though there are risks involved, I would usually just go for it. And I find the sort of the feeling of home that I keep sort of referring to. I find that as long as I can feel that somewhere in the process, I'm probably good. I like that feels good. But I also do realize that it's a very privileged place to be.
Yeah. It forgive me because you said Kosovo and it just unlocked this thing in my I'm like, I remember this. I was like 7, 8, and I just realized, like, as you said that was a war, right? Like for me, that was a thing that happened on the news. They talked about every day at like 5 o'clock, and it was like crisis in Kosovo. And that was it. That was, it was like, okay, there's a crisis. Like that, the famine in Ethiopia, Princess Diana dying, like these are all things that like happened that I don't know. It's weird to realize the gravity of things now that you're an adult
Oh
because it was
yeah.
absolutely a war and not just a tense situation, you know?
Well, the first time I was there, the war was sort of over, but they were like, but not on that street. Don't walk over there because there's a crazy guy with a sniper rifle, and like he's not over it yet. And we're like, okay, okay. And everyone was smoking everywhere. So when we got to the hotel, they were like, we asked for a non-smoking room, and they're like, no one's smoking there right now. Like if you don't smoke, it'll be a non-smoking room. Like and it was we felt like it's one of the times where I felt like thoroughly stupid, like truly like a absolute idiot. And it was very fascinating. I've gone back from time to time, and they're rebuilding, and they have a bunch of young people that returned. That like they fled the country and they returned to Kosovo to sort of to fix it, and they're doing this most amazing job of it. And it's like it's funny to go to a place to sort of be inspiring and then just come back being like, I'm thoroughly inspired, and they're very impressive. And I don't know.
Yeah, it's so interesting. Like because here, I guess this is just going to be the theme of the conversation. Sorry, folks. We're talking about comics, but we're also just going to talk about how different it is in America versus other places, right? Like because the areas where I may go and I'm like, man, I got to do better in life is like you might drive through a fancy neighborhood or like you go somewhere at at like 3 o'clock in the afternoon when it's like, okay, everybody is at work, so it shouldn't be busy, right? And it's like there's a dad there, but
Mhm.
like I'm like, how does he get to be here? Like, I need to do better in life, right? Like, so, but it's funny because all the stuff that I'm thinking about is like aspirational. It's
Mhm.
not necessarily me going to an area where people are, underprivileged or what have you, and then they're like thriving in spite of. I don't, I don't know that I see that often. If I'm honest with you, like,
That's interesting because I mean, well, clearly I hadn't before I went to Kosovo either, and I will say that I'm not sure if sort of because they have a culture and they have a thing there that is so um like our culture, like Norwegian culture, feels very distant in a way.
mm,
And I don't think we necessarily are, but like if the first time I went to America and people were like, "How are you?" I was like, what the fuck do you want to know? What's going on here? Like, what's this? Or I would answer, so I would be like in the store buying a dress and be like, "Well, I'm quite hungover from yesterday, and my back hurts." Like it's
you
just
answered and you thought people would care about your answer. Is that what you're saying?
I don't know. Like if a Norwegian person asks you how you are, you can,
Uh,
they want to know. They
yeah.
they're already they're invested. And it's I think one of the things that we value, like we don't like if you have a fancy car, no one gives a shit. Like no one gives a shit about any of that stuff. What we do give a shit about is like what kind of wool underwear you have when you go hiking on the mountains with all the rest of us, and
Mm,
how often you get to do that. So if you get to do it a lot, and if you get to do all of the cool places, then we'll notice on your like, and you can't obviously you can't say it. You just have to from time to time put a picture of the beautiful place you've been to, right?
mm,
And it's time is a luxury that we appreciate, and being able to get out there and get out into nature. So once I got to Kosovo, I realized that they're sort of their family thing. Like at some point, I was doing a thing with a woman, and her entire family was involved in doing that. Like I was cooked for it. It felt like I was just dealing with their entire thing. And I went back thinking like I fucked up. I need to get like a huge family. That's what I started. I don't know. So I need to ingratiate myself with some
mm.
other people so I can start having a bunch of aunties around me. I don't know. But it's interesting. It's one of the joys of traveling.
Right.
And I do think like in America, because I'm always fascinated when people are like they grew up in Kansas, but now they're going to move to Florida. And to me, that's a it feels like a very long way away, you know?
Mm.
And it feels like if I were like, oh, I'm going to go move to Spain now, but it's still America and people do it all the time. And in many ways, you have a lot of that. There is a sort of continuity there that I enjoy that we don't have at all.
You know, yes, but and maybe it's just because politics has gotten so out of control. Like
Oh,
now, different states do feel like different countries. Like even somewhere like New York City, I was there for Comic Con last year, and like traveling through the five boroughs feels like traveling. Like you get like that subway is like a portal. It's not just a train. Like you get out in Harlem and it's like, oh wait, where am I? And then you go to Soho and it's like, this is a different place.
mhm.
And it's all like 5 square miles. And it's like, how is it so different? How is it so diverse in this little area? But yeah, no, like what I was
That is interesting. That
yeah,
is I realized like there are some places in America that when I go there, I can't at any point talk about Norway, or like how we do things. Because first of all, they're not going to know that Norway is a country. They're going to be like, is that, the capital of Europe? Whatever. And I don't say that to sort of mock, because
yeah,
I think there's a like when you grow up with states and that's what you do. Like I'm sure you don't get the same. Like we're a tiny country. We're 5.5 million people, I think, in the entire stretch of Norway. So it's obviously clearly natural that we at some point went out and sought out different countries. Like everyone who lives here has been, to neighboring countries at some point. But I can easily see how that wouldn't be the case in America, you know?
yeah.
But there are some places where I realize like I need to, I don't know, tone down the Scandinavian and I don't know,
We
and
also
ask,
we learn about being American in a way that is like every other place is scary. So it's like
interesting.
I've never been to Canada or Mexico. I'd probably be more inclined to go to Canada than Mexico. Come to find out, I got friends that live in both places and both are great.
Yeah, could assume so.
you know,
It,
but that's not the way we learn about stuff at school. It's like whatever was going on in Europe, we escaped that. I say we, I wasn't a part of this we, right? But those people escaped that and started this great country and then imported black people who also found it to be great somehow
after a bit,
after a while.
after a while,
Well,
few
depending on which history
generations
book you
of
read.
it is a I don't know. The funny thing about America is that because there are so many sort of problems on that, but I do love you guys. Like I fucking love being in America, and I
Yeah.
love a good sort of a good American parody of itself. Go to a diner, and the diner is exactly how you like because it's just how, like, that's how it is.
Yeah.
I made Jason Aaron take me to Walmart at some point,
Okay.
Walmart in Kansas City. And as we parked the car and I opened the door and two people were like mid having an argument, or the end of the argument, I suppose, because all I heard was, well, fuck you too. And someone storming off. And I was, it's what I wanted. This is
Yeah.
great.
This is America. This is great.
Yeah, and then we went to Arby's because again, I made him take me to Arby's, and I like that there's not even like a sort of symbolic piece of lettuce. Like there's it's bread and meat.
Listen, we have the meats. That's what Arby's has. I love that you wanted somebody to take you to Arby's and nobody here likes Arby's.
No, of
Arby's
course
keeping
not.
them in business.
I will say that Jason, that was sort of, I know that Jason loves me because he took me to Arby's and watched me eat, try to eat one of those things.
Uh,
And then at some point we went somewhere else where he could have a proper meal. But he also, first night I was there, he got barbecue and
yeah.
I got like burnt ends.
Hmm.
That's a magical thing.
Yes.
And I don't know. And then when we got there, we're getting the food that we're getting far up topic. But I mean,
Yeah.
it's adjacent thing. So
Well, listen,
we got
if America never imported slaves, we would never have gotten pits, which means we would never have gotten barbecue in Kansas City or otherwise, and
ugh,
you would not get to enjoy burnt ends. So
burnt ends.
all
Like
great.
give it we got like a fucking cardboard box full of meat. And then he showed me wrestling, which I can't quite say I get, but it was delightful
Mhm. Wrestling
because
is I wrestling is a very specific thing because again, I grew up in the 90s. And so it's like I feel like the best time for wrestling was that we call the Attitude Era. It's like The Rock and Stone Cold and all that. And I kind of forgot wrestling existed after that. I didn't realize people are still so into wrestling. Like, but it's an American institution, apparently.
it's a something. It's a theater of it, all of it, I suppose. I don't quite get it, but I do see there's a lot of overlap between wrestling and comics. I see
Hmm.
there are a bunch of people who enjoy both, and I respect it. And I did enjoy jet lagged, eating burnt ends and watching wrestling. That was great.
And now the McMahons run the Department of Education, which is comical in itself. It all comes full circle. So,
I mean, if we're gonna, okay, we're over here being like, who's doing what now? What
yeah,
what's
listen,
going on?
Linda McMahon. I only know her from being suplexed into a desk, and she's running the Department of Education. Like that is crazy. But hey,
Yeah,
is what it
but
is. But then again, Donald Trump is literally like just the rich guy from every movie you've ever seen. Like
yeah,
he was on Fresh Prince of Bel Air, a little guest appearance, and he was on was it? Oh my gosh, my favorite movie as a kid was The Little Rascals. And there's like the
he
the go ahead.
he wasn't. I'm trying to remember if I've ever seen it.
All right, so the Little Rascals is Alfalfa and Darla and He-Man and the Women Haters Club, all that stuff, right? There's the one kid that Darla like breaks up with Alfalfa and goes and starts dating this kid. I say dating, they're like five, but
Sure,
she's
sure.
dating this kid Waldo, the super rich kid. And when they go to the little boxcar race, Waldo's got the big fancy car, and his dad is Donald Trump, who shows up for the end of the last scene of the movie, Little
Like
Rascals.
literally?
His dad in the movie is literally Donald Trump.
Are you fucking kidding me?
Like again, Donald Trump was just this pop culture figure of wealth. Like no, we didn't. He was not a politician at all. He was just that dude from TV that
No.
we know from being rich. Sometimes he was on Home Alone
Oh
too.
yeah, that I remember. But I just find it fascinating just because like as a woman, and I assume like we know who to stay away from, and he has a sort of charisma of a guy you don't want to sit next to at a dinner party. Like we see the things, and we saw the things during The Apprentice and all of the nonsense too. Like he was never a particularly interesting or nice guy, and
Mhm.
all of the red flags were there. So how, wow, I don't know. And it would be a stunning example of sort of the lengths of which democracy can get you, as long as democracy, keeps going. Because it would be bad if it's stopped now.
I the thing that I think about fairly often is like, what does the post Donald Trump like political landscape look like? Like we don't there's no way we just go back to like the regular boring politicians of yesteryear, but also like do I want President Whoopi Goldberg? Like what world is this we're living in now?
I don't know. But wouldn't you, isn't it great to have a really boring president? Someone who's just like can
I missed
deal
it.
with
I
you
missed it.
you want someone that feels sort of slightly smarter than you and are willing to do the really boring, really complicated things. That's who you want, right?
Yeah, like, the president's over there being the president, every now and then they do the State of the Union address and it's like, "Oh yeah, we have a president. I
Yeah.
forgot about that." And
Yep.
then, it's election year and you get a new president and that's the level of involvement I want like every day a new crazy thing.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, I was thinking those people don't need food. Like I it's like why are we talking about this? Why is there an open mic right now?
That has been an astounding thing to see, especially when you have people are like, "Oh, I'm gonna defend this on TikTok. I'm gonna explain why these people don't deserve food." The kids. I,
Children
I,
deserve to eat.
I don't. It's an interesting time to be alive.
It is. It is. This is depressing. All right, so
But we have comics, and that's we because I check in with my American friends and a bunch of the editors all the time. Like I check, and we always end up with like, but at least we're making comics, so
right,
that's still good.
right, right. I'm not going to bring up any more sad stories. So
Well, I'll try. I mean, I make no promises.
it's all good. So, all right. So you decide like writing comics is what you need to do. Like it fuels you in a way that other pursuits haven't necessarily, right? Um, can we talk about some of your first stories? Like, what's the first thing you wrote? And was
Oh,
like, I don't know. That's a better question for me. Like, because we all have creative pursuits. We all like as kids, we all drew. We had coloring books and all the stuff, right? At what point do you decide like I want to write stories and have other people read them for a living?
because that's sort of the thing that I've never been able to sort of grapple with the other people reading it, because that was never the goal, I think, in
Mhm.
my mind. I just wanted to I wanted to write, and it felt sort of it felt, I don't know. In the beginning, it was a very uh, let's write something that I would like to read,
Mhm.
and it had very little thought about like theme or whatever. And I did some things like I wrote a book called Ageless, which it's I think it's the first comic script I ever wrote. Don't
Mhm.
read it, please. That would be awful, because it's still out there somewhere. But it's a sort of great learning experience, and I had a sort of fearlessness back then that I sort of appreciate. So one of the things that I find a little something about sort of I don't want to I don't want to offend anyone in any
Mhm.
possible way. I don't want to put my publishers in and but I do also enjoy uh, uh like like a good violent joke. Like I do I enjoy it, but things go a little too far. It's just
Mhm.
I find that delightful. Um and I've realized at some point like we got like even in books where um which was supposed to be quite raw, like say Sisters of Battle, the Warhammer thing I did. Um, was just so scared of doing anything that can be slightly horny or any, And I tried a couple of things that was sort of I was sort of hoping to get something in there, which wasn't allowed. And I think at some point some of my edges has sort of been sort of shaved off
Mhm.
just because um of all of the discussions at like Marvel or what you can do and like how far you can take a joke. And a lot of it is um there is a huge difference in Europe and America about where the especially when it comes to like nakedness and I will say that a lot of the I'm going to say this loud. A lot of the European comics are sort of driven by in some nudity. Just
Mhm.
like I bought someone's comic collection because they had a very interesting. They had some war stories on top, and I was like, yeah, I'll buy the entire thing. And I realized like the entire bottom of the boxes were just porn from Finland and Belgium and um, very nice, comics porn. The you would have two characters that were just fucking the entire issue, and then by the end they were like, "Oh, it was a universe being created. It's like it's science fiction." We're like, "Yeah, sure, sure, sure. Sure. That's what we were going for, by all means."
Yeah.
Um, so trying to sort of, I after working at Marvel and DC and Dynamite for a few years now, I can feel that I think more about like to make sure that the reader is comfortable.
Mhm.
And if we're going to step over somehow, it has to be done very sort of mindfully.
Yeah.
Um, and that's probably a good thing, but also sometimes I feel like um, we lack a certain like comics can feel a little bloodless sometimes, and I don't mean in lack of violence, but just there's
Mhm.
a um,
There's the and a degree to which it feels toothless, maybe
that's a
like.
good word. Yeah. Um, and I think the first books that I wrote, they had more like the first I did a web comic where like the first page, first panel was a splash of a guy hanging himself. And which sort of worked in the story. Like it was a
Mhm.
mindful, deeply sort of personal story.
Right.
But I realized like that's not something you necessarily need to do without, throwing in some content warnings and everything,
Right.
which is, that's fair. I realized. I don't think I put any content warnings on it, but I don't think it's online anymore. So
Right. So, and that's an interesting discussion in general, right? Like sort of creativity versus, standards and practices, whether that's like for purposes of, decency, so-called decency, or morality, or just corporate comics, period, right? Like there's always going to be some goal over and above whatever your creative vision is. Usually it's, let's make some money. And
yep.
so, like, let's make this palatable for as many people as possible. In other instances, it's like, okay, well, let's not say or do anything that's going to upset our sponsors or, advertisers or whomever. It kind of all goes back to the same end goal. But I'm curious as to, because some people like will find that constraint and feel like it helps in creativity. Like it feels like you're exercising a muscle you don't often get to. Like, how much of my story can I tell
Hmm.
within these limitations? Or do you feel like it fosters creativity in that way, or does it feel limiting to you?
I think that I've said this a couple of times now. Like it feels like we're in an era now where no one's sort of making your new favorite anything. Like no one's making your new favorite movie, and no one's making like no one's taking the chances to just be like, this isn't for everyone. Like
Mm,
this is for the people who's gonna love this, and then
mhm,
the rest have other stuff, right? And I think that, and this isn't about like being offensive or anything. It's just being um having sort of the courage to be like, well, I no, like this will exclude some people,
mhm.
but that might be okay. Um, because it's just like me and my mom, we do not have the same sense of humor. We will never truly enjoy the same thing. That's just how it is.
Yeah.
Besides, when we do watch the same things, we will make little comments that's just so like watching sex scenes with my mom is, a traumatic thing to the, I don't know. Point being, I think there is something to letting people who has some sort of vision just see that through. And then if they are very passionate about it, chances are someone else is going to be too, right?
Yeah.
And I think those stories are more interesting. And I think in the like, if you can make yourself a little cult classic that people will recommend, even in comics, I think that's going to be financially better. Like if you have something that like, oh, you do have to read this story from 15 years ago. Like Saga, the first trade of Saga, I'm pretty sure that still sells a lot
Absolutely.
every year. And I will say that Take Saga, I'm pretty sure that Brian pushed through a bunch of things that if he had had um, a, a publisher that would get into it, he would have needed to shave off some edges there too. So I'm very happy he didn't. And it's obviously like there's a freedom there that you can see works. But I also know that there are people who make sort of copies of Saga without all the sex
Mhm.
and make PDFs of them and share them as a sort of, I don't know, non-naughty version of Saga.
Right.
Sounds
Yeah.
depressing. But,
Well, I'm one on my audience makes fun of me because I'm very much like that. If there was a non-naughty version of anything, that's the one I'm jumping on.
oh,
Right.
really?
Yeah. Generally speaking, yes. Like there are very few exceptions. Like so for me, the reason I got into comics was because I felt like TV was just like getting like really pornographic. And so it was
Oh,
like, all right, I'm raising little girls, like I don't know, like what does me being interested in any of this like say about me first off, but also what does it teach her, you know? And I mean there's varying degrees of opinions over like, autonomy versus like objectification and all the things. And it's like I don't know how you being my child like plays into
mm,
that, but I'd rather not make that decision for you. I'd rather you come to that,
yeah.
you know, at the appropriate time. So,
I see that's sort of a good point. I realized like um my kids who they cannot stand to see any sort of intimacy on screen, but
mm,
that includes, you know, kissing or whatever because it's
mm,
too awkward. Like the awkwardness of it is just and I wonder if that's a sort of pandemic thing that they sort of missed a bunch of time in between there and they were all online and doing all of the online things and then they came out and they I think it's partly that if they do something embarrassing someone's going to film it like they sort of
mm,
that's in the back of their minds at all times. So when we're watching anything that has to do with any sort of vulnerability on the part of the character, they're like ah, which I don't know, I find it interesting. um
yeah.
and I also realized like the I have a 13-year-old girl who she watches a bunch of different sort of YouTube series,
Mm,
hugely successful YouTube things, and less so because she's into a bunch of different sort of fandom things. And there is a way of storytelling in those series that we've sort of never seen before. And it's going to be interesting when they start telling stories for to the rest of us. Like when that generation, I wonder if our sort of old tired three-act structure is gonna still work. I don't know.
I don't know. Like I think about like my kids. My youngest is not 4. I have 3 kids now. That's crazy. But my middle baby, she's does not have the attention span that like say I did. Like when I was a kid, first of all we had was whatever came on TV. We didn't get to
Mhm.
choose what came on. It was just okay, now Charlie Brown's on. All right, cool. We'll sit here until that goes off. And I guess we had commercial breaks to sort of break up the thing. But like my kid is like, if this is not interesting in the first 30 seconds
Yeah.
and then the next 30 seconds, like in it, but it's constantly being judged. And
Hmm.
the moment it gets boring, it's like, all right, can we watch something else now? Like, can we do this thing or that thing? So I don't know like how. And then I'm also thinking like, okay, even like kids my teenagers age, like they grew up watching ridiculous or ridiculousness. It's like it's clip shows. And then they have TikTok and Instagram and the shorts and stuff. So it's like I don't know what story structure is going to look like for them in 30 years. It's
I
interesting.
just, I'm not sure if I'm sort of excited to see it or I'm terrified for it. But I do like that the teenagers seem to be more and more into physical media again, and there seems to be a sort of they're in some ways stepping back from the choice of it all. Um, and I like that. I think like I force my kids through movies just because, and no, obviously, clearly no phones allowed, just because I
Mhm.
feel like you should be able to sit through a movie.
Right. Yeah. There's a whole wave of kids that came from TikTok and they're now on YouTube and they're doing their new comic book day vlogs and stuff. And they're like, oh man, I went to the comic shop and look at this Batman. That's really, and it's like, wow, it makes me feel like an old man because of the way they talk about it. And it's like I'm only like 10 years removed from you guys, but like it feels like a whole different world. They sound like they discovered a time capsule from like 1860. It's like, oh, look how cool society used to be.
Yeah. Which is, but that's one of the fuck things. Sorry, we're getting into all sorts of nonsense. But one of the things that struck me when sort of raising these two teenagers of mine is that like all of the things that used to be good, like say a good nature show
Hmm.
that used to be like, look at beautiful animals doing their stuff. That's now they used to be full of beautiful animals here. Not anymore because we fucked it up. Like we fucked everything up. So everything is sort of like, oh, it used to be better at some point.
Hmm.
And we know what happened, and we didn't do anything about it. We're not doing anything about it now. So, welcome to the world. Like it is a again, I think it's a very difficult thing to like I think it's more difficult than it has ever been to be a kid
Hmm.
now and try to find some sort of meaning in life and what you're supposed to do. And like you can say a lot about the idea of sort of growing up and getting married and have some kids and a dog and like a Volvo. Um, but I mean, at least that was some sort of plan that you can deviate from. Like
Hmm.
at this point, I don't think like we're just going for survival, I suppose. Like we're
Yeah.
like the Finns. We're just enjoying peacetime until, I
Until
don't know.
otherwise. Yeah, it's interesting, like to see the I don't know the way it feels like we sort of squandered the best times, right? Like when I think about the '90s and like the dot-com boom, and like I was that kid that grew up watching like I Love the '80s on VH1. It's like, oh look, we went and you could see how like society clearly progressed from year to year,
Yep.
decade to decade, and then it's like we're the most prosperous, and then you know, but I guess the cool thing about what we do, or at least what I do, is I'm out here reading comics, and for whatever time I'm spending time with these characters that I have known and loved for my entire life. You know, Spider-Man is only as old as my mom, and that's crazy because it's like she didn't necessarily grow up with Spider-Man the way I did. My grandmother absolutely didn't. But so I don't know what they look back at and they're like, simpler times. But for me, I've always had Spider-Man, I've always had Batman. And what's fun about comics now is like nostalgia is the play.
Hmm.
And so, we've got all these licensed properties. Dynamite's got crazy amounts of stuff coming out that like I probably shouldn't be buying every week because I don't have time to read it all. But it's just amazing that I can buy Johnny Quest and Space Ghost and Powerpuff Girls. And now there's The Nightmare Before Christmas. Like I can't tell you how many, first of all, I didn't grow up watching Tim Burton movies. Like, if I'm honest with you, Tim Burton movies always gave me the creeps.
Yeah,
Like,
I can see why.
so Nightmare Before Christmas wasn't on my radar. I didn't really interact with it as a kid. It was not until I got married and my wife, who like loves that movie, was like, "Oh, we got to watch Nightmare Before Christmas." And like, all I know about it is this dude right here, right? And I this is a very iconic scene, like standing at the
Mhm.
top of the little mountain singing and whatnot. And this is Halloween. And that's what I got for Nightmare Before Christmas. I'm curious as to like what your interaction with that show or movie was as a kid or
Well,
when.
it came out in '93, I think,
Mm.
and I wasn't sort of I was online, but I wasn't online. I would have been 9, I think.
Okay.
And but I was an exceptionally like gothy kid. That
Okay.
was I don't even think I meant to be. It sort of just happened. Like I at some point all the clothing became black and people started calling me a Satanist because I don't know, that was the word they had, I suppose. And to me, there's just the idea of Halloween, which we didn't have at all back then. That was just the most magical thing I could imagine, right? And I remember we started celebrating Halloween. I would bring my friends and we would have Halloween at our house. Obviously, no trick or treating or something because people wouldn't understand what we were doing at all. And we would watch that movie.
Mm,
And it felt like a sort of like, oh, this is a spectacular, joyful, glorious thing
mhm.
that combines a bunch of the things that we really like and does it without sort of mocking anyone. It could have been sort of pretentious or moralistic but they sort of stayed away from all those things and just um and I don't know, it's always been a sort of joyful thing. And now that Halloween is, we're getting there. There are some trick-or-treaters. They don't know what the trick part is, so they will come up and they'll be like, trick or treat. And I'll always ask, like, do you have a trick? Like, what's the plan there if I say no? And obviously that's breaking some sort of back, like, so they just freeze.
Right.
And it's a very weird thing. And then their parents who are with them because everyone feels like we don't know what this is. We're just going to send our kids out there. They're very excited. We're going to go, but a few feet behind them. And I don't know, whatever. Point is, we're trying, but we don't have the sort of spectacular, like garden displays like you do, which I find delightful.
Okay.
It's my favorite fucking holiday. And I just, so what we do is I've always projected Nightmare Before Christmas on the barn in which I have my studio. Like the place I'm in here. I'm in a very, very old barn right now. So we project the movie on the wall. And then all the kids see that, okay, something like they will be Halloween friendly
Okay.
and they will have candy, which we do.
Nice. Yeah, it's funny. Like Halloween, like I'm in the Bible Belt, so it's like it's very hit or miss. Some people celebrate, some people don't, right? Like I didn't grow up celebrating Halloween, and I don't really celebrate it now. I'm kind of Halloween agnostic. Like I don't, but for me, it's like, I'm Christian, and so it's like there's a lot of like Halloween that does just straight up feel Satanist, right? But then at the same time, there's like the little kids that are dressed up as like princesses and Buzz Lightyear and all that. It's like, okay, I don't know what to do with that. Like, you're a cute kid. Here's some candy, right? But then at the same time, I tried, like, we were taking now my oldest, well, she was always my oldest, but my oldest, we were taking her trick or treating, and we tried it a few years in a row. And it was like you had to get out earlier and earlier
Hmm.
to avoid like the people in like the scariest costumes ever that would like just straight up traumatize your kid. And
Yeah.
so we just got to a point where it's like, all right, like we're just gonna say no to Halloween. Like we'll find events to go to else other times. Now we got comics and stuff, so I can go to the comic shop. You can wear cosplay, go to conventions, all the things. Um, but yeah, there's definitely like the vibe. Okay, well, I feel like in recent years, Halloween has gotten so much bigger, and I don't know if it's just an advance in technology or what, but like I have never seen so many 40-foot skeletons and
Yeah.
like the animatronics and the light. Like Halloween has become as elaborate as Christmas, and that was never the case when I was a kid.
See, but that's one of the things that, it feels like we reached the stage of capitalism that we lost our minds, right? And much as I enjoy a good, huge fucking skeleton, which I truly do, I would buy one of those
Mm.
if they were available here.
Yeah.
Um, but I will also be very aware that this thing it's silly that it was produced in the first place. You know what I mean? But and I do feel like when it comes to that's a huge difference between America and Scandinavia again, that we don't have, like, you have seasons in, like, holiday seasons, in a way that we're not quite, like, we will celebrate a day. you know?
Uh-huh.
And then we'll be like, oh, it's Christmas. We had, the Christmas tree was up there for a week or something.
Uh-huh.
But we don't do like 2 months of Christmas.
Oh yeah.
Or like Easter. I mean, like every Easter, what happens in Norway is just because it's probably going to be the first time we see the sun in a while.
Hmm.
So everyone's like, oh, whatever, Jesus, whatever the fuck. We're just gonna go to the mountains and we're gonna ski in the sun. That's what we're gonna do.
Mm.
And then we take the entire week off, all of us. And it's a good time to be here unless you're relying on restaurants or taxi drivers because they will also be in the mountains
Huh.
skiing.
There's no time that I can think of. Okay, Christmas Day. Christmas Day is like the only holiday where everything shuts down. It's like, all right, hope you got gas yesterday because you won't get it today. And even now we got pay at the pump, so you can still get gas and stuff, but like whatever. I feel like you said, it's capitalism. Because I remember when Black Friday happened, they started doing it on Thanksgiving Day, and it was
Is it
such a bad
open
thing.
on Thanksgiving? Your
That
stores and shit?
yeah, yeah. Like, and there was a time where it wasn't. Like everything was closed on Thanksgiving. Like Thanksgiving and Christmas were the two sacred days. And then but it was like, all right, you would go to Thanksgiving dinner, and then it was like, all right, Black Friday, 2, 3, 4 o'clock in the morning, we're gonna rush to the stores and get in line and get your new TV or whatever you're gonna get. And then one day, I think it was Walmart was like, hey, our Black Friday is gonna start at 6 p.m. on Thanksgiving. And then the next year, like every other store fell in suit or followed suit. And so now that's been a thing. And it wasn't until COVID, like when everybody had to go sit down. And then I don't know if it was Walmart or Target that did it first, but they were like, you know what? It's kind of cruel to ask people to spend time away from their families on this holiday. We're gonna stay closed on Thursday. And so a bunch of places did it as well. And so now I think we're back to
It,
having
it
Thursday sacred.
sounds exceptionally cruel to have it like to start at 6 p.m., start the sales at 6 p.m. on
Yeah.
Thanksgiving. Isn't that just a huge fuck you to everyone involved?
Yeah, it's
I don't know.
crazy. It's
Like
crazy.
that's what I remember. I did 4th of July in America like 20 years ago or something, and I realized like the Macy's was open. I assumed that everything would be closed,
Yeah.
and it wasn't. And in some ways, it's very practical, you know.
Mhm.
And we have that discussion right now going on in Norway because we still have like Sundays, everything is it's going to be closed. That's just
Mhm.
how it is. Um, and there are some shops that are like, well, maybe we can, start flirting with the idea of having like the grocery stores open and everything. And it just like we're not complete idiots. You are able to plan around the available time.
Right.
Just let people have the day off. I don't know, like, and I was like, that's one of the fascinating things about working with Americans that I'm used to having 6 weeks off during
Mhm.
summer. You don't seem to do that.
No.
Or my, the week at Easter, I don't think you take any time off for Easter.
Nope.
It's I don't know.
We get we have Good Friday, but we don't necessarily get that off. Like depends on where you work.
All right.
Um, yeah. So no. And even now, like Christmas you get at my job you get Christmas Eve and Christmas Day. Everything else is like you got to put in a request for that. Like, and Thanksgiving is the same thing. Some places it's like some places give you either Black Friday or the day after Christmas, but you can't get both of those off. Like it's we always work all the time, work all the time, and then we come home and we start podcasts and
Yep.
pretend that it's a hobby, but it's really work too. So
Well, it is, but hopefully there's some passion there because like going back to the sort of the feeling of like doing something because you love it versus doing something because you're trying to make a living, or like almost even worse is when you don't love your job, but you're trying to be the best at your job. And I find the sort of current idea that everything should be optimized, and it's not optimized for life in any possible way. It's just like how can we optimize to get as much productivity into your day as possible. And
mhm,
if there are any sort of life involved in that, is going to be like you're going to work out, because you work out, you can work for longer and blah blah blah. And I think it is interesting that when you have people or you get really depressed or really anxious, the therapist is going to be like, well, have you heard about mindfulness? You should try to, be present, make some food, maybe, all of the food you didn't make because you were in a hurry. Just, smell the whatever the fuck, Sally. Go for a walk. All of the things that we sort of optimized out of our lives,
Hmm.
they're sort of, that's what we need to do.
Yeah, I promise this is a comic book podcast. I was watching
I would promise.
I was watching somebody yesterday who was talking about how they just felt like they were in a brain fog and like just couldn't do anything or whatever because they were always like they couldn't get any tasks done. They always just felt like this brain fog. And long story short, it was vitamin D deficiency, literally caused from staying inside all the time. And like just completely broke his brain for a time.
Yep.
Like who knew? Who knew that taking a break from work was beneficial?
I think I just saw a thing about this. I think Norwegians live like 5 years longer than Americans, and which is comes down to that we we don't drive everywhere. We walk a lot. Like there's a
Yeah.
lot of walking involved, and we will walk. We don't call it hiking. We just call it walking. Up a mountain or whatever the fuck. And it's such an ingrained part of our culture to be outside. And it turns out that's good for you. But we do also get like it's so fucking dark here right now, and it's going to be dark for months. And I'm doing this little, I have the lamp, the daylight lamp in my
Mhm.
face, sort of desperately trying not to get into the very predictable funk
Mhm.
of, mid-January, where at some point I just start hating everyone, and I think maybe it's not everyone, maybe it's me, and that's usually when I need to do something.
Yeah. I just learned about seasonal depression in the last few years. And I was like, huh, that makes so much sense. So much sense.
I had that I did a an exhibition. I did a graphic design for an exhibition in like far up in Norway, and it was 5 stories in this very fancy building that we were supposed to fill with stuff.
Mm.
And we didn't have a huge budget, so it was a lot of like printed stuff that I had to make. And in the far north of Norway, like it's dark throughout the winter. You don't see the sun at all. And we realized like they were sort of lagging behind on everything. Every time we tried to get a hold of them, they were just sort of everything sort of slowed down. And then we went up there to install the exhibition, and that was during springtime. So the sun wasn't just back; it was there all the time. And I had a moment where me and some of my other idiot Oslo friends were sort of setting up and being like, "Oh, maybe we should get some dinner." And the locals were like, "It's 4 o'clock in the morning, you idiots." You should, what, are you high? And we're like, yeah, we're high on light. Like, it's just because you can't, like, if you take away the natural whatever, like, you fuck with your brain in a way that it's very obvious to see it when you go into sort of the darkness, and even more so when you get to a place where, like, you can't escape the sun. It's just there all the time.
Yeah, I'm feeling it right now. We just had daylight savings time. What? We set our clocks back a couple weeks ago. And so it gets dark earlier and earlier in the day right now. Like at 5 p.m., it's like pitch black, it feels
Yep.
like. And it's terrible because usually I will work at night. Like I work into the evening and I like can't. I just can't do it. So I feel so unproductive right now,
And that's, as we all know, the worst thing you can be in the world.
especially in America.
Especially, yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
But I mean, we are doing this now. This is productive. I mean, poor fucking comics fan sitting around trying to want the latest Catwoman gossip or whatever.
right, right.
Uh, uh,
So the Night Before Christmas, Shiver of Christmas Town is a 4 issue series that you've got coming. Is it still starting in January?
I think so.
Okay,
This is one of those things that at some point when you get into doing a bunch of issues, you don't know anymore. Like
right.
it's just
So I'm curious as to like what the general premise of the story is.
Well, the thing is, like, we wanted to. I I don't think they told us like make a kid story, but we were very clear that this needed to be something that would be appropriate for kids. And we had a sort of idea of or they had an idea that they wanted a new creature, and that was pretty much it. And they wanted Lock, Shock, and Barrel to go on a little trick-or-treating adventure. So the premise of the book is that Dr. Finkelstein, he makes what was supposed to be a horrifying, terrible creature, and it comes out as something very sweet and very cute and not at all scary, which is in, Halloween Town, that would be a failure.
Mm,
So Dr. Finkelstein is sort of is upset and is trying to fix the situation by doing something else. This creature, this cute little bear, still exists, and this is Shiver, it's a little polar bear. It's very
mm,
cute. Um, and then at some point, uh, uh, the Lock, Shock, and Barrel, because they are going to do like a Christmas Town trick-or-treating thing where they're supposed to introduce trick-or-treating to Christmas Town. Um, they somehow get their hands on the bear and some tricks, and and they piss off some ghouls.
okay.
And then, fuckery happens. It's a very fun, sweet book. And I do hope that people who um people who enjoy the movie, I hope they will see that we sort of the delight of it. We try to keep that as much as we can. And our artist Edu, he is like he does this amazing job of trying to get the sort of feel of the stop motion animation just
Uh-huh.
like I don't entirely sure how you do that, but he gets it so right, and I think it was an interesting process because everything that we do had to be approved by Disney and Tim Burton, so we were sort of going through and getting notes from people, which isn't that big of a problem for me because I can just rewrite a little thing, but he had to, everything needs to be correct and according to the movie or the sort of accepted lore. So he's done an astounding job on it, I feel.
It looks amazing. I'm gonna share. There's one page I'm gonna share real quick. I feel like encapsulates what you're talking about, like trying to get this feel of stop motion. Now, first
Yeah.
of all, like just looking at this sequence, it's like it's not a great distance being traveled, right? We got the little trap here, got the kids here, and we've got them walking, their heads kind of shaking, but it does not look, it looks kind of static
Yeah.
outside of those movement lines. And then even here, like everything kind of feels like it is moving like jittery, and that's
Yeah,
fun.
I'm sort of impressed we were allowed to keep the axe in the wall there, but I'm happy we
Oh yeah.
did, because I will like Lock, Shock, and Barrel are probably my favorite characters to write. They're just like the most delightful little rascals in the world,
Mm,
and in that bathtub they have you know all sorts of nonsense. And I suggested some of the things that were in there, and I had a couple of times where Disney were like, no,
right.
that no, let's um but again, we are trying to make it so that especially the like people who are fans of the movies, if they have kids, they should feel comfortable buying it for the kids. I think you would be comfortable showing it to your kids.
Nice.
Might be some
So
awkwardness though. I mean, I don't.
I'm curious, right? Like if the story, the crux of the story is like trying to make something sinister, and it comes out sweet. And with this conversation, even about like our sensibilities, right? Like, you've got different ideas of what like edginess might be, or what's too graphic, or whatever. I'm curious about a time where you tried to make something dark and it came out sweet.
Well, I think it's first of all, I think it's something inherently interesting that your creators thinks that you're wrong. And I
Mhm.
think that a lot of people can sort of relate to that in some ways just by having disapproving parents or whatever you're doing. Like there's just a feeling of you were supposed to be this and you're something else and it didn't work.
Mm,
And sometimes like I feel like I can't escape myself if you know what I mean. Like I can't seem to this is what you're getting, whatever you do, and however much I'm trying to fix it, it doesn't seem to do anything. I'm still going to be this person. And I find it an interesting sort of setting for a tiny young character to just from the get-go know that you're not right, but you are though.
Mm,
Um, and even more interesting at some point, the bear becomes uh like a you get a little view of what the bear could become.
mm,
Um, and I don't know. I find it interesting, and I hope that sort of comes through on the page,
mm.
if that makes sense. But I
Yeah.
also like I always find it when people um try to do something like make things dark and edgy or um like I think my favorite example of this is um and I've told this story before, I think, not on your podcast though. So, but I went to like I'm in a like metal, like proper metal, Norwegian metal, and we there is a certain there's a joke, in the people who are into metal. You can sort of because we look to a certain extent quite ridiculous with all our things, and
Mm,
there is a an understanding within the subculture that you might not necessarily catch if just looking at it from afar.
mm.
And I think my favorite example of this is I was at the Dimmu Borgir concert. Okay, like sorry. And I think it was Dark Funeral who had the was the opening act, and they had inverted crosses, steel crosses with like swords on stage, and then they had little burgers stuck on the swords, and while they were playing, they were eating, taking bites of the hamburgers, which is a ridiculous thing, right? But there's a joke there, and we're all sort of getting the joke. And that night there was a dude sort of dressed as a full vampire who tried to hit on me in a sort of together in the darkness we shall go, like in that sort of way.
Uh,
And I was like, oh, do you not get the joke? Like because it's just when you don't, it falters in a way.
mm,
And you can always tell. And I think that's one of the things that sort of worked with Nightmare Before Christmas, the movie. It doesn't look like someone sat down around the table and were like, "Hey, we should get into the goth action. Do you think there's some goth money to be made?" Like, whoa, how can we get that going? Like,
right.
it feels authentic in a way. Like, I think Burton uh, got the joke, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
And I think that's the only time I truly feel like that sort of thing works is when you can sort of tell that this is someone who understands the full spectrum of the absurdity of whatever you're doing.
Yeah.
And that includes like, say, war movies, when you have people who write war movies or war comics based on what they think war should be or what they think. It never sort of works. So
Mm,
when you get memoirs or something where you have people who will add all the absurdities, it almost like it always feels more real.
mm.
You know?
Yeah.
Mm.
It's interesting. Like, this is, I don't know how I'm going to title this podcast episode because, but the conversation really just keeps coming back to culture and differences, right? Like, I'm a black kid from the Bible Belt. So, like, the weirdest thing in the world growing up was goth kids.
Right.
Mhm.
So where is the like the Bible Belt?
So
Which state are you in?
I'm in North Carolina. Um, the Bible Belt is like goes south and west. So it's like I think Virginia counts as well, but it's I don't know why they call it a belt. It's not really a belt. It's just the people that decided to leave during the Civil War. But especially since the late 80s, there's been like, the rise in the religious right and all of that. And so like there's very much like family values and however you want to brand Christianity,
Mhm.
like that's kind of the prominent scheme here. Um, but all that to say, like, there were quote unquote standards of decency and all of that, but also I'm a black kid. And so it's like there's this layer of, okay, here's what, is conservative and is what's happening in politics, right? There's that through the 80s and 90s, and then there's also here's what will make you palatable
Mm.
as a minority living in this system. And generally speaking, that is stay out of trouble, don't listen to anything explicit, don't do anything explicit, and just go find a good job. Keep your head down and keep working. Like that's kind of so anyway, all of that to say, right? Like there's a lot of like like Dungeons and Dragons was like a thing that was like, okay, stay away from that, and like Pokemon and all the stuff. So like I don't know, it's weird because we have again being a black American, everything's kind of like second and third level stuff.
Mm.
Like you hear about like the satanic panic and all that stuff from back in the day. And it's like, what was our perspective of that? Like, oh, those were just white people being crazy white people.
Yeah,
Right.
and I suppose it wasn't really an option
Right.
to be both black and a Satanist.
Right.
That would be a problem.
Right.
Like
Yeah.
if
That would
you,
so it's like you're
I
looking at
find
that like it's weird.
I find the word palatable. That is a it's a very good description of something that I feel like um, we have, like the Norwegian society has been very sort of everything should be like whatever you're doing, as long as you're not
Mhm.
hurting anyone else. We don't go in for everyone needs to be palatable, but it is a fascinating phrase, and I think you're sort of spot on.
Yeah.
Uh, I don't know. I've heard that the other day was someone were talking about how they worked very hard to be sort of corporately appropriate in every
Hmm.
possible way, which I'm not, as it turns
Hmm.
out. It's, with the swearing and all of the very bad jokes,
Hmm.
the all too far in every possible way. And that's also something that I find I personally, I find truth more interesting than anything else.
Hmm.
And I enjoy so very much when people tell me about either like both good and bad or awful things that has happened to them. Like if they tell me with sort of in honesty,
Hmm.
I don't understand how it could be anything but interesting.
Right.
And I don't see any reason to hide anything. But then again, I do see that I again come from I'm very privileged to be able to say that from my stupid little studio where I get to do whatever I want. And I also get the sort of I get the crazy artist pass. People
Hmm.
be like, oh, you know how she is. She's, one of the artist people, if she's a writer. And I
Right.
get to be more annoying and honest and blunt, I suppose.
Right. I was trying to figure out why I went on the palatable uh aside, but I remember now. So it was because like growing up, what I did not realize was that like all of the goth gear and the makeup and all the stuff, like even like I remember it was a big thing like the first time you saw like Kiss without makeup, right? And it's like you realize, oh, it's an act, like it's a costume that they put on. They're playing. They're not like this dude calling himself the Prince of Darkness is not because he like wants to be dark. It's like he's just having fun. And I don't know, like black people don't get
It's
to have fun in that way, I should say, you know?
No, but I think that's interesting. And I think it's like getting like I had this when it comes to like women in those subcultures. I had
Hmm.
this conversation with someone the other day, which is not a fun conversation to have because they were sort of waxing and waning about how great the 90s were and like how the subcultures of specific music subcultures were so great and um uh, and I at some point I was like, but you do know that like the women protected you though, like because it wasn't any better in like the metal sort of subculture when it came to sort of the rapes and everything. And a lot of people were sort of protecting the culture by not stepping forward because it would look bad for the entirety of that sort of thing. Um, and I sometimes I think about that when people go on like the oh when we were punks, everything was fantastic, and we had a plan for everything. We're like, yeah, you sort of did. You were having fun, like
Right.
you, and I'm happy you did. But there's a little something there. There's a little asterisk there. But
Yeah.
I do think in general it's a question of community, right? Like you
Yeah.
need community and you need to find it somewhere. And the sort of gothic thing is a very effective way to find other people who are into the same kind of music and who are into probably read the same books as you and everything. It's a very efficient way to just be like, I'm one of you guys.
Yeah.
And I think like it's not really that different from the sports people or the
Mhm.
whoever they are. Or the like my I was in like the computer party scene. So we would organize computer parties and bring our computers and sit in code and do things for days and then have competitions and everything. Um, and and the feeling of having community is something that I think we undervalue hugely
Mhm.
in today's society. And like Norway was at some point a Christian country, but we're generally sort of we're very chill when it comes to religion. Like it's not something that's expected of you in any possible way. But one of the things that sort of disappear when you take away religion is the sort of the default community that is your church. Like that
Mhm.
falters, you know?
Yeah.
And I thought about this a lot over the last 2 years that like I don't think I could ever believe in a Christian God, but I do see how, say, prayer, having a sort of a practice of gratitude
Mhm.
is a very good thing for you as a person.
Mhm.
And I think there are a lot of things that came with religion before it got, insane. Because
Yeah.
there are some place again, if we're gonna like the churches have lost their fucking minds. But if you just look at the sort of as a gathering place for a
Mhm.
community that would help each other, it was a very good thing. It was good for people. And now we're sort of there where we need to find our own community and we choose it. Um, but like I don't think I mentioned it on air, but like I will put you on. So you will sort
Mhm.
of go on in the background. And sometimes you talk to like friends of mine. And it's a lovely thing, right? Because my chosen community is obviously the comics people.
Right.
And they're not here.
Mm.
You're you're over there.
Yeah. I really enjoy this aspect of the hobby, right? Like I enjoy comics and I enjoy talking about comics online. They're to me they're almost separate hobbies. Like they inform one another, but it's like it's this part that's my favorite, being able to talk to people from different cultures, which is why our conversation had really nothing to do with comics, except at points, right? But it's like in some ways comics are also about everything,
Yeah.
right? And so it's like it gives us, like you said, like those sort of like in music subcultures or sports, like there are those visual cues like, all right, this guy's got a Yankees hat on, I know I can talk to him about this. I've got a Discord community, and it's like, yeah, what brought us here is comics, but when you get
Mhm.
inside there, it's like there's people talking about what recipes they cooked and whatever else is going on. And I think that's the cool part, is being able to just talk to people. Like I find
Yeah.
it fascinating, like that you grew up completely different than I did, right? Like again, we're having all these talking about all these cultural touch points, and you have one perspective, I have a different one. It's like, wait, like when we get together and share that information, it feels amazing. I do think you're right though, like just in regards to the church losing their mind. I think America has this weird thing where we brand everything, right?
Yeah.
And you
It's
know,
so weird.
it's really weird, right? Like, because like you can't tell the story of like Black people in America without the church, but the distinction is it's the Black church, right? And now we live in a so-called post-racial society. Like we had a Black president, cool, racism's solved and over. Now, what do we do with this thing where it's like on one hand we have white nationalism that is very entrenched in, conservative politics, which is very entrenched in the evangelical church.
Hmm.
while also still having a black church with black people that are fighting for like justice and issues of the oppressed and food insecurities and equalities and all the things. And it's like somehow these are opposing ideas, both being attributed to the same God. I can see how that's very confusing for someone who's
What
not
I
getting any of
find
it, you know?
fascinating in that sort of thing, if you do
Mhm.
this, like you have the mega churches with, and then you have the black church, only one of them seems religious to me, if you know what I mean.
Mhm.
Like because and there's a social experiment on TikTok right now. There's a lady who calls churches and asks if they would give her baby some baby formula because she's out of baby formula. And as you would imagine, the mega churches are not coming out well in this little experiment,
Mhm.
while all of the sort of the very community based, it's not only churches but the other sort of religious houses, um, they they will clearly help because they're based in, and I think like even the Verge's Christian values, which
Mhm.
is sort of watered down to the ridiculous at this point, right?
Yeah.
And I don't know, like it's one thing feels like it's got something to do with religion, and the other things feels like it's got something to do with capitalism.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah. It's
And
true.
it's as someone who sort of grew up very atheist, it I can, when I see the black churches when they, it sounds looks delightful. Sort of I can see why you would want to do that thing.
Hmm.
I don't understand why you would want to pay a bunch of money to go to a mega church and see, the pastor drive in whatever car you just bought for to make it sort of cheap point about something. Like it looks astoundingly stupid. And then we're sort of, because we're again quite atheist, but we do get those people. Like we have one of those that's sort of spreading. I don't understand, but
Yeah. It's it's interesting. It's interesting. But I find, especially now, where everything is polarizing, everything is politicized, like it it's weird. It is so weird how like no matter what you talk about, it strikes a nerve with someone in the worst way.
yeah,
So like we can't even agree. I did that stupid TikTok over the Daniel Warren Johnson Batman issue. And like, I'm like the the idea that Batman was fighting conservatives is so beyond me. I'm like, are we talking about the same conservatives? Like these people are literally carrying pitchforks and wearing sheets on their face. Like, and you think that's an attack on you? That's wild.
yeah.
Quite the self-report there. Like,
Yeah, but that's the astounding thing, right? Like we're suddenly living like that's the same thing to me. Like in Europe, when you have the people being like, "Oh, Judge Dredd, they shouldn't be political. This is you've ruined the comic." And it's like, what? Like I just don't like. Did you watch Star Wars and get it wrong? Like, did you think that was a tragedy? I don't understand.
yeah,
But I will say that I do. There is a sort of there's an absence of humanity in a lot of the things that we're sort of like we're getting to when things are get so divided, we lose something
yeah,
very precious, I think. Um, but at the same time, I do have a huge problem with being friends with someone who will not consider some people as worthy as other. That's just I'm gonna have a problem with that.
for sure.
And it's I don't quite understand how we got here, but I do feel like we need to do something drastic to get back a sort of sense of just again community and humanity.
Yeah. And the farther I go in this, the more I'm convinced like the arts are the way that we're gonna get
Yeah.
back to that, right? Because like no matter what you might hear people saying, like, oh, this is just a projection of this or that, it's like really art is a reflection of how people feel at a
Yeah.
given time. And you might feel pro one thing or against another or whatever, but it's like at its face, like if you're actually reading the thing, watching the thing, there's a message there. Now you can decide, after the fact, do I agree with this message or not? But there's something there that's just inherently beautiful
Mhm.
about seeing other people's expression
Yeah.
of however they're feeling.
I-
And my hope is that we can take that, like, and not just watch it and be like, ah, that was good or bad, but like take that discussion offline now that we've seen this cool thing, whether it's the
mm.
Nightmare Before Christmas or Sinners or whatever it's gonna be.
And I think there is something there's been a lot of discussions about like empathy lately.
Mhm.
I think empathy is inherently good, and just being able to understand other people's perspectives. It's just
Right.
that's an important thing, right? And one of the things that you can do to be more empathic or to learn empathy, one of the things you have to do is to read and just read other people's perspective. And uh, that's one of the things that I think comics does really well, and I think is one of the reasons why I love comics fans so much, and I'm one of them myself. Is there is first of all, there was a time where like you didn't, I mean, you can still feel it a bit in Norway that people when they talk about comics they'll be like, oh, that's low art somehow, like it's
Mhm.
sort of it's lesser. And I think that if you're a fan of comics, you're already past that thing.
Yeah.
There's not an inch of potential left in you, which I fucking love. And I had a moment many years ago where I had because I'm a painter and I paint, I paint people mostly.
Mhm.
And I had an exhibition in New York, and I was walking around the opening of my exhibition, talking to the New York art people who are like the it's just they are a parody of a parody. They are like the Family Guy version of whatever you think it is. It is the most fascinating thing. And then, and I walked around and I was like, this is. I mean, I like a lot of the really artsy types, but there is a level of pretension here that I struggle with, and it feels like if there's a joke here, I don't get it. Like there was one of those things, and then I went to New York Comic Con the next day, and I was like, oh, here are my people.
Mhm.
They because they are there's a sort of there's a celebration of incredible art. Like let's face it, the comic artists are the best fucking artists up there with like this. I could say the same thing about like really great tattoo artists. They're
Mhm.
also like exceptionally undervalued, I think. Um, but being able to deliver through a comic book, and I know that like I'm a painter, I could never do it.
Mhm.
And it's a joy to celebrate that with people who likes the stories and likes the characters and loves the medium more than anything. And I think if you can sort of proudly announce that you're a comic fan, chances are I'll like you better than most
Mhm.
people. You know?
Yeah. Well, I think that is a great note to end on, right? Because I think all of us, both of us talking and everyone listening, can proudly announce that they are comic fans. So, The Nightmare Before Christmas. Do I have to say the whole title every time?
No,
Excuse
no,
me.
no.
Disney Tim Burton's The Nightmare Before Christmas, The Shiver of Christmas Town is in stores this January. So check it out. And beyond that, Torunn is writing Red Sonja right now. She's writing Catwoman, Spider Girl. So there's a lot of comics that we didn't talk about that we'll have to come back and have a part two. Maybe after I edit this episode, that'll end up being part four. But it's all good.
This
This
poor
is-
fucker needs to edit this nonsense. This is good. Oh my God. But
but
this was delightful.
I very much enjoyed this conversation. So hopefully it won't be the last.
I will come back the moment you let me.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, before you do go, where can people find you on social media or you're online for them to discover your works?
Well, I have a newsletter.
Okay.
Just Google my name. I don't know. I will be on Instagram from time to time, though it's mostly like pictures of moose and foxes and shit that I have a cabin in the Swedish forest, and that's like the one thing I know how to. I don't know. And I'm on TikTok from time to time, not well. So if you want to sort of keep up with my work, I would say the newsletter is probably the way to go. If you want to send me a message, do it through Instagram or the newsletter.
Nice. I'll make sure I'll leave links to all of that in the show notes as well as the description of this video. Just a reminder for those of you who are listening to the audio version, you can find this video on YouTube. It's a separate channel called Comics Are Dope, the podcast. I hope you will subscribe to find all sorts of goodies. And with that, I don't know what you're doing after this, but hopefully you stay safe, stay awesome, and read something dope today. Peace.